Hey, 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 everyone. Welcome. It's Stephanie Outen, and I'm here with Storytime with Stephanie, which is a segment of the Writer's Anointing podcast. And I'm so excited to be here tonight with a special guest, author Daphne K. Johnson, who is the author of She Said Yes. It's time to answer the call to purpose. And before we get started with tonight's show, I just want to say to those in Louisiana, those who are being impacted by Hurricane Ida, um, anyone who has family members there, and just for the individuals who are battling the storms and the after effects of the storms, we just say a special prayer and just release God's favor and blessings over the people of New Orleans. We know that they have been tormented by hurricanes from Katrina now to Ida, and we just pray peace to fall over our land in Jesus' name. And so tonight, I am so pleased to have with us Daphne K. Johnson. Daphne is, again, the author of She Said Yes, It's Time to Answer the Call to Purpose. And I'm so excited that she's here joining us tonight. So, Daphne, are you here?
Yes. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Daphne. I'm so pleased to have you with us. And thank you for saying yes, yes, as a part of your purpose. So, Daphne is the author of this phenomenal book that initially, when we talked about her story, this book, and the title, people would imagine, okay, she said yes. Oh, this has to be about marriage, getting married, saying yes to a proposal. But it's actually far more than that and far beyond that. It's about knowing that when you have an assignment, when you have been called to purpose, that you must say yes. You must be obedient to follow God's call to purpose. And so, Daphne, I want you to just start out a little bit by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what made you write this book, and then we'll start talking a little bit more about the story.
Sure. Again, thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me to talk with you and with your audience. I'm Daphne Johnson. I am a writer, published author. I'm excited to say that. She Said Yes was released in June. I also have a couple other literary works as well, but this is probably the biggest project I've done. And I'm a mom. I'm a grandmother, and I am an associate minister at my church. And I would probably say that for the most part, I consider myself to be a cheerleader. I like to encourage others and help to encourage and push you towards your purpose. So that would be a characteristic I give myself. And I know that over the years, I've had the pleasure of cheering and encouraging many people to really recognize and think about how they can begin to walk in their purpose. And so the book actually helped solidify something that I knew that was my purpose.
That's phenomenal. And so when you think about purpose, Daphne, and so many people, think of purpose as this elusive word because they just can't seem to figure out what their purpose is. How do you define purpose and what does that mean to you?
Sure. I would say that purpose means the definition of purpose is the reason something was created. And so when we think about the fact that we were created for a reason, we know that God, our Father, had in mind for us something that he wanted us to carry out during our time here. And so to walk in your purpose is really to get yourself aligned with that thing that God gave you, that only you can do the way you do it, so that you can really walk out and fulfill what he's called you to. But more importantly, I would say that purpose also has a function that's not just for you, but it's also meant to serve others. So in the process of doing that thing that God gave you to do, you're going to make life better for someone. You're going to serve someone. And in the process, you'll also be glorifying him.
Yeah, I love that. And what you said about alignment as well is so key. You have to get in alignment with your purpose and act in order to actually see it come to pass and be fulfilled. And so even for you coming into alignment and coming into agreement and obedience with the purpose that had God for you, God had for you, there's a whole story behind that too. So I want to kind of share a little bit. You mentioned that you have other literary works. but you wrote a book called Vision Inspired Living, Daily Inspirations for Single Mothers. And when you wrote that book, little did you know that that book was actually going to change and impact someone's life, and that they would then, a year or so later, write to you and share how that particular book impacted them. And that kind of started you on this journey of actually living out now what is your purpose. So tell us a little bit about that letter and how that came to be.
Sure. When I think about it, it gives me chills even to this day, to tell the story, because I was working as a recruiter, and I have to say that I was feeling a little bit out of alignment at that point myself in my journey. Just that I felt like there's something more that I should be doing, and something was nagging at me. And I was even saying, God, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? I just feel like there's something more I should be doing. But it just so happened, and you know, there's no such thing as circumstance with God, right? He set me up, really. But I interviewed a young woman for a position at the organization, and after we were done, she asked me, actually, it was her follow-up note to me saying, by the way, have you written a book? And I said, yes, I've written a book, and had no idea what was to come. But she said, it just so happens I read your book, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to tell you thank you. And she wanted to share with me how my book impacted her at a very critical time in her life. She was living in a shelter, and she had left a domestic violence situation. And she shared with me that her life at that moment was as she didn't feel that her life held much worth, and her self-esteem was at an all-time low. And she shared with me that the words from that book actually helped lift her up and help her to have a little bit more fortitude that she could make it, based on reading some of the testimonies of what was in my devotional, how I made it and navigated life as a single mother. So, of course, that left me in tears. I'm sitting there going, how on earth, A, did the book wind up in a shelter, but B, the Lord answered my questions and my prayers about, am I doing the right thing? And what he revealed to me is that something I had written had made a difference.
Yes.
And my call to write is one that I can't not answer any longer. So I really needed to get to work on continuing the journey myself as a writer and releasing the project She Said Yes, which I had actually put on the back burner.
But see, God had a bigger purpose for that. And he knew that it was going to take some time and some things that you had to walk through in order to get to that place of actually saying yes, that you were going to bring forth this great book, this powerful book, this amazing book. And that actually started back, in October, I think 2018, you did a message at church on a Sunday morning. And the title of that message was She Said Yes.
Yes.
She said yes. And so that again was the setup. And I see comments coming through about the setup, so serious, and that's true. And Brandon said purpose is bigger than us, and that's so powerful. And that is true. The purpose was aligning itself at that time when you did that sermon. So what sparked you to even tell that sermon, share that sermon, and deliver that message that Sunday morning?
Sure. October is Women's Month at my church. And I had the honor of sharing a message during Women's Month, during Sunday morning service. And that occasion usually calls for an opportunity to encourage, to edify the women. And, you know, I chose a biblical character that women could relate to, and that was Mary. And so the story is coming from Mary, who was visited by the angel Gabriel, and he told her, you have an assignment from God. And I use that story, although we know we typically hear that around Christmas time because the focus is on the birth of Jesus. But I took the focus to Mary, and I walked the reader through her journey of contemplating this invitation, giving consent to say yes, and just considering what all the ramifications of her saying yes would be. And so I used that to help the women during the message to say, hey, you've got a purpose. There's a purpose that God has called you to. And I just walked them through that story, and that was the bulk of the message. Now, I will tell you this. I think the message was well received, but more importantly, God didn't let me go after I delivered the message. It was
He
something
sure did.
about she said yes, and something about hearing yes. When people would say yes, it would just do something in my spirit. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'm done with she said yes. And after some time, I decided that yes, I do need to write the book because that thing wouldn't let me go. And
Mm.
so once I made the decision and I got in alignment and said yes to the assignment, then obviously the fruit of my yes is now a book.
Amen. Amen. Show us that book. Show us that beautiful book.
Yes.
He said yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And
And
you'll notice that there's a phone on the front cover
mm,
and it has purpose calling you. And you've got the decision to make. Are you going to accept? Are you
mm,
going to decline the call?
wow.
So that whole message of you don't want to wait and you don't want to
Mm,
hesitate. You know, when purpose is calling you, you have a
mm.
decision to make and you need to go ahead and answer the call.
Oh, that's so powerful. And you said something too. You said that it wouldn't let you go, right? That message and that word, it would not let you go. And that's what happens when you're being propelled into your purpose. It just won't let you go. And so fast forward to what was it? Um, when COVID hit. When
Yeah,
COVID
Mark.
hit,
Hmm.
yeah. And you began to then work from home at that point, right?
Yeah.
And tell us about that. What okay, Erica says alignment to the assignment makes all the difference. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love Erica.
Yes, Erica. Erica
Yes.
actually designed the
She
cover.
designed my cover. Yes.
So thank you for that beautiful work, Erica. Um, and Brenda said that's good. That's good. So when COVID hit and you began working from home, you still had a role to play with your employer, but you knew that God was calling you to write this book. So, what were some of the things that were at play that may have been distracting you, limiting you, taking your time away? Or did you just say, no, I have to get focused and I have to fulfill this purpose, which is to write this book that God has called me to write?
Sure. It was several months into 2020 before I really came to understand that I needed to truly um, get things off the back burner and move forward
Mhm.
with the project. So it was later in the year, but I will tell you that what I started to do was I started to make notes about, you know, the direction I saw myself headed. I sought coaching. You know, if people
Mhm.
don't understand and believe in coaching, I will tell you that
Mhm.
coaching helped me tremendously to create a game plan for myself. And then I would say it was actually towards the beginning of 2021 when I decided formally that, okay, I need to put the wheels in motion and start working on this project. And so
Mhm.
it was early 2021 that I really was ready to start putting pen to paper and developing my plan to start writing. And so I sought help with that as well through
Mhm.
Talk Publishing. And
Yes.
there was also an aha moment or a catalyst for me that really solidified the fact that I don't have time to waste anymore. And I
Mm.
will tell you that it was early 2021. Unfortunately, my children's father, my former husband, passed away unexpectedly. And
Mhm.
you know, I don't consider myself that old. So you know, to think that you know my former husband, who was only a couple years older than me, passed away, it just really brought home the fact that time is not guaranteed. Tomorrow's
Mhm.
not promised. And so I want to make sure that I get my business together and do what I was called to do while I have
Mhm.
whatever time God has for me. And
Yeah.
so that's when I really put the formal things into place to get to work.
And it is unfortunate when we have to experience those types of, life transitions that bring us to that place of realizing, hey, I need to get my work done because life is short. The time that I have can't be wasted. And so I have to, shift into action to do the things that I've been called to do. Um, but you were able to take that. And just like the word says, all things work together for good. And so even with his passing, something good came out of it. You were able to focus and take the time that you needed to be able to write your book, to be able to share this beautiful message about purpose, and to use what I call one of the greatest stories of someone saying yes,
Yeah.
Mary being able to walk into the purpose that God had for her. She could have easily said no. And where would we be if she said no? Right.
Absolutely. And
And
that
so,
same message holds true for us as well.
yeah.
If we don't say yes, if we say no,
Mm.
not only are we hindering ourselves, but we could be hindering someone else who might
Woo.
be waiting on us to do what God called us to do, because He is truly the orchestrator of things, and He's strategic. And just like that young woman in the shelter read my book, and I want to say it was 2016. I believe I wrote that book in 2013, 2012. I mean, it's been some years ago. So had I
Mm.
not written that book, it would have met her while she was in a shelter and had
Mm.
a need emotionally and spiritually to be uplifted and encouraged.
And that's a prime example of how our yes is not always for us.
Yes.
Our yes has people attached to it. Our yes has an assignment that it's supposed to fulfill. And when we say yes, it's almost like a wake up call for other people to hear it, those people who are supposed to hear it. And it reverberates when you say yes, something activates in those people who are called to you, in those people who are called to a purpose. Something will activate in them for them to say, hey, it's time for me to do what I'm supposed to do. And I don't know if that young lady ever followed up with you again. I don't know if she, has been following you. But what I will say is I'm sure that even after reading the first book, right, something in her activated. Something in her said, you know what, I might be a single parent. I may have experienced domestic abuse. I may be in a shelter now, but I'm here still. I'm alive still. So I have a purpose. I have an assignment that I'm supposed to fulfill. And my hope is that she was able to take what she learned from that book and used it to be able to give her own yes in some way so that others would be, thrust into their purpose as well.
Amen.
So let me ask you this throughout the book, and we'll kind of talk through some of the chapters, not all of them, because we want everyone to purchase a book. So the link is running across the screen. It's a long link, but I will post it again after the show is over. We'll post it so you can click on the link and purchase this book. So we won't give it all away, but tell us a little bit more about why you chose to use Mary's story in particular, because there's so many examples of individuals in the Bible, in our personal lives, who have given their yes. But what was the specific reason that you use Mary's story?
There's something about Mary's story that shows the progression of her journey,
Mm-hmm.
because not only did she say yes to the angel, there were so many other factors around her yes that had to be considered that I think many people can relate to. And then when she said yes and the angel departed from her, she went to visit her relative Elizabeth,
Yes.
who also confirmed for her that, because we know when those two got together, the babies in their wombs leaped, right?
Leap.
And
Yes.
so, that also is another aspect of being on the journey, getting in the presence of other purpose-filled people. And I'm going to say women today,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because my ministry heart is for women.
Yeah,
So although I have male readers, the heart of this story is for a woman. So she
absolutely.
got in the presence of Elizabeth, and Elizabeth was able to affirm her in the purpose that she had been called to.
Yes.
And then there's more in the story as it relates to the whole idea that God is good, and they were able to celebrate even before
Mm-hmm.
everything came to pass. So that whole story gave me a really good roadmap
Mm-hmm.
for my sermon, obviously, to help encourage the women. But then when I began to write the book, it really gave really good, I would say, mileposts along the journey
Mm-hmm.
that I could really use as the chapter titles to take the reader deeper and
Yeah.
to give them something to reflect on
Mm-hmm.
as they
Mm-hmm.
try and wrap their minds around the idea of understanding and walking in their purpose.
And that's a good segue because throughout the book, you actually give some good tips, right? You give the reader something to think about, especially because we all have a unique purpose, right? There's something specific that each of us have been assigned to do on this earth. And so many times people are like, well, I don't know, how am I supposed to figure that out? What is my purpose? And there are people who will walk around for years struggling to figure out their purpose because they haven't discovered the blueprint, right? They haven't discovered the blueprint, which is to really sit with the Father to hear from Him. What is it that He's placed in them? What is that passion? What is burning inside of them that they simply cannot stop thinking about it? When they do it, they are overjoyed with it, right? And so you give some great tips for the reader to be able to help them understand and discern how to get to that place of purpose and understanding their purpose and their impact. I don't want you to give the tips because I want I want the viewers to purchase the book to get the tips, but I want you to talk about some of the responsibilities that come along with saying yes, because giving your yes is a commitment, right? Giving your yes means there's something attached to it that you have to follow through on, you have to do. So, talk a little bit about those responsibilities that come along with understanding your purpose and then following through and walking in it.
Sure. I think one of the first things that people really would want to do is to just be clear, to get some clarity. And I think I try to help pull that out through the reflections that we do through the book. But then understanding what it means to say yes. What would happen if I didn't say yes? Some of those things are areas where the individual can understand the potential impact of their yes. There's a fruit that comes from your yes. So I visit all of those topics. And I think one of the most important things I really try to bring home is that idea about urgency. Again, that sense of urgency that yes, make your commitment and don't sit on it. Don't put it on the back burner like I did. And you know what, though, at the end of the day, if you did put it on the back burner, ask the Lord to help you and just get to work.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because as long as you still have breath in your body, you still have an opportunity to fulfill that purpose, right? So if you missed it today, it's okay because you won't miss it. He won't allow you to miss it. You still have time.
Absolutely. And then the other important thing as it relates to the responsibility is to understand that your yes is not going to look like someone else's and that it's unique to you and it's significant no matter what it is. Because if it helps one person, if it honors God, then your yes is really necessary.
And you asked the question, you asked these two questions that when I read them, it gave me goosebumps because it made me sit back and really think, right? Now I know my purpose. I know I'm walking in my purpose. I know what God has called me to do. But when I read the question, it said, what if I don't step up and do the thing I'm called to do? Right. And you want to pause there because you do ask another question right after, but that's an opportunity to pause and think about what will happen. What is going to happen if I literally just don't step up and do the thing that I'm called to do? The next question then says, what if I do? And when I read that, I'm like, and I still get goosebumps thinking about that because there's an excitement that comes with knowing that there's something that could be so powerful, so good, that's attached to me walking in my purpose and serving. And so when we get to that place of saying yes, the enemy is busy and he's going to want to come in and he's going to put up what I call these yes blockades, right? It's like, distraction after distraction. I'm going to throw this hurdle in your way. I'm going to make it so that you can't fulfill your purpose. But what he doesn't know, he's already defeated, right? And so we're going to fulfill our purpose regardless. But you talk about some of those things, the things that stand in your way of being able to fulfill your purpose. So talk to us a little bit about that, some of those yes blockades that maybe you even experienced as you began walking out your purpose and how you were able to overcome them.
Sure. And you know what? Sometimes it can just be everyday life. We have jobs, we have children, grandchildren, other commitments that really can fill our time. And so those can be blockades in the sense that you can be so involved to the degree that you put that thing that you're called to do on the back burner. And I know we are so guilty, of not prioritizing the thing that's important to us, right? Yep. So this is just that push to say, hey, get your yes off the back burner and and create a plan to make it work. And I would tell you, when I decided that I was going to write my book, I invested in myself. I shared with you that I got coaching, fabulous coach, and I'm going to say his name, John Haynes III. He just helped me figure out some things because honestly, I was thinking maybe I was not being effective at my current work, but it was really that I was being called to something else. And so as I understood that and figured out a game plan to really make it priority, coaching was very important to me. And then also I invested in coaching to get my book done.
Yeah.
I had accountability. I had a schedule. I had a cohort of other writers who we together knew that we had a finish line in sight. And so having that set up for me made it very evident that my book was going to be birthed and it was going to be coming, come hell or high water. I was going to get it done. And so that's the urgency we should put behind whatever it is we are called to do. And again, it could be that you bake good cakes. And, when you bake your cakes, you have everybody feeling good at the family reunion because your cakes are so good, but that's a blessing. That's a way of blessing people, feeding people and making people happy through your gift is something that, you can certainly pull off the back burner or create a little way of making sure you do a little bit of it. You don't have to go full in, or you don't have to make it your full-time career. It doesn't have to be your job, but it has to be something that that fulfills your calling on the earth.
And let me stop and just say good evening to everyone who has joined us. I see Patrice has come on, aka Opal, has come on this to be a part of the show tonight. If you have any comments or questions, please definitely post them. Daphne is open to responding to any questions that you might have. But we're just so intrigued by the way that you utilize this story of Mary to be able to share about purpose. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, especially because of those deterrents, those blockades that do come to keep us off track from fulfilling our purpose, you talk about gaining clarification and then getting confirmation, right? And those are two key things when it's time to walk in your purpose. You do have to get clarification from God, clarification, even from coaches, right? To be able to ensure that what it is that you're doing falls in line with the purpose and the assignment and the mandate that God has given you. So talk a little bit about clarification and then that confirmation. So those that are listening and those who listen later on the replay will understand what that process can look like. So share maybe even your own process.
Sure. I'll tell you what really worked for me was recognizing that what I've been called to has always been with me. It's always been in me. I've loved writing since I was a little girl. I mean, I would write short stories. I would write poetry. I would enter contests. I would get called on to read something in front of a group. I mean, it was always in me. The funny thing is, I didn't choose to pursue it as a career. And I find that hilarious now. But as I was going into college and all of that, that was not on my list to pursue as a career. But it always showed up. I took creative writing in college. And the feedback I got and the grades I got were evidence that writing is truly something that I was literally born to do. And so it wasn't until I had an experience in my life that really took me to a place where I needed to encourage myself. I figured out that writing was something that I could do to also encourage others. And so that's when obviously I wrote my first book. So getting clarification sometimes means revisiting your life and thinking about some themes of things that have been with you always. I mean, someone who has always sang, you know, that's your gift. I mean, you've been singing since you came out the womb, some people say that. And so you can find clues throughout your life of things that you are just naturally good at. Or you get tapped on the shoulder to do that thing because nobody does it like you. I mean, there are people who are great speakers and always getting invited to come up and, say something because they are great orators. So if you think back, your purpose has been living,
Mm.
in you and with you. So
Ooh.
that's a good way to get clarification.
And that's so good. And that actually right there, those who work with me know I like to give homework. And so, what I would encourage you to do if you are still seeking your purpose and trying to understand what it is that you've been designed to do here on earth, do exactly what Daphne said. Look for clues. Go back and make notes. And Annette says it. That's good. She said revisiting your life for clues on things you're naturally good at or always doing is so key because your purpose rests within the core. It's the core of who you are. It's in your makeup. So if you go back and you see, gosh, I've been doing that all my life, but just never realized that it was a part of my purpose. Because I think what happens is sometimes people think that purpose is attached to, having to do it as like a job or it has to be for a financial gain. And that's not always the case. Now, many of us have been able to take our purpose and turn that into financial blessing because it's what God has called us to do long term, right? But it doesn't always have to be attached to that. It is something that fulfills you, that every time you wake up in the morning, you get excited to be able to do that thing because you know that thing is going to touch someone else's life and it's going to bless someone else. So going back and looking at your childhood, because a lot of things stem from our childhood, those things that brought you joy and excitement, that's a clue that it's attached to your purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's homework to find those clues to be able to identify your purpose. And then, Daphne, when you have clarified and you've gotten those clues, you want to seek confirmation. So, how can someone go about getting that confirmation that they are actually indeed living out their purpose?
The first one, and you mentioned this, the first one would be to first get with God and to truly seek him for clarification or confirmation on the direction you should be going.
Mm-hmm.
Spending time in prayer. I encourage in my book that the reader take some time to maybe even journal and write things out. But also, there will be clues around you as well, or confirmation around you, because you're often called on for those things that you do, that only you do the way you do it. I like to say it that way. People ask you, they call on you to perform that thing. And oftentimes it's something that you would do for free, to be quite honest.
Yes.
I mean, I've written things for people, rewritten, revised because I like it. I like the way with words for nothing, and then it's just something that I'm called on to do. And I just do it. I've written poetry, short stories. I wanted to do greeting cards, all those things. I just did it because it was in me. So again, those confirmations come from around you.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. So when a person now actually gives their yes and they've gotten confirmation, they've gotten the clarification, they've gotten the confirmation, and now they've said yes, what happens, right? And you use, again, the story of Mary to talk about what can happen when you say yes. And there's that whole piece of giving consent that says, God, I am going, and I'm getting overwhelmed now because, when you think about God, I'm going to allow you to work through me, to do what you need to do through me, to be able to impact someone's life, to be able to make a difference, to see someone else transform because I said yes, right? So giving that consent is so important. And one of the things you say is when Mary said, I am the Lord's servant. May everything you said about me come true. And that's what she was able to say to the angel. I am the Lord's servant. And when we recognize that we're his servant, we're here to do what he's called us to do. And we step into that and give our consent, doors open, right? Doors open. And so talk about how doors have been able to open for you because you were able to give your yes. And you said, God, work through me to fulfill this purpose.
Wow, it gives me chills just to even hear you say it back because, I think I say in the book that Mary allowed God to use her womb and her boom, bless the world. Now, she probably had no idea the impact that her yes would have, but just the fact that she was yielded to whatever it is God wanted to do. And so for me, it was the same thing, that I knew that getting my project off the back burner meant yielding to a process of letting God do whatever it is he wants to do with She Said Yes. And I will tell you that he has given me such a vision for She Said Yes that it blows my mind, because I hear yes, I hear She Said Yes just reverberating in the atmosphere. And I really want to not only have more readers, but I want to have more people who will commit and say She Said Yes, say I said yes. So I'm looking to do a campaign around saying yes to purpose. And I didn't have that in mind when I decided to write the book, but the Lord has been directing me on how to move the movement forward, because in reality, it's not just about the book, but it really is a movement. And it really is intended to spark something in you that will encourage you to say yes. And it gives me chills to think about it, because I never would have thought that, oh my God, I'm thinking about starting a podcast.
Right.
I'm a podcast junkie, but never in my wildest imagination did I aspire to be a podcaster. But I know that that's coming. So when I think about the doors that are opening, all of the interviews that I've done, it's not even about book sales at this point. I know the Lord will reward me for my efforts. I know that. But the whole idea is that this was the birthing of a mission to get people to say yes to their purpose, because the world is going to be a better place if more people do what they've been called to do.
Amen. Brenda says you are on to something, Daphne, and you are. You are. This is something bigger. This is way beyond a book. This is truly a movement to stir people's soul, to get them to the place of recognizing that their purpose is what will change this world, that living in their purpose and walking out that purpose will change the world. Oh, yeah, I get excited with this.
Walking in your purpose changes you.
Yes.
When I get up in the morning, I feel different, knowing that I'm doing something that God has called me to do versus the ordinary routine that I was experiencing prior to aligning with God and answering the call.
Yes. And it's not just giving that consent, but then you also have to give your commitment. You cannot be wishy-washy, and you talk about giving that commitment, right? It's not just, okay, yes, Lord, I'm going to go ahead and do what you say, but then you leave it at that. No, you have to stand firm and you have to commit to it. And then you have to seek him for what does that process look like now for me to actually carry this thing out? Because if he's giving you a mandate, he actually has the blueprint that he wants to download to you. And you need to be able to see all of that through. So seeking him to understand the design of your purpose and how you're supposed to actuate that purpose, whether it be through a book, a podcast, this movement. And Daphne's movement is big, y'all. It's powerful. And there's so much attached to this thing. There are conferences coming, right? There are coaching programs coming out of this. This thing has fruit attached to it. So imagine when you step into your own purpose, the fruit that's attached to it, right? When you water that seed and you let that thing grow and you are committed to that process, the fruit that can come from it, that not only you will eat from, but other people will eat from too. And Annette says, yes, it's not just about giving consent, but also giving your commitment. Absolutely.
Yes.
Because that is what God wants. We have to say, God, now I'm committed to this thing. And we commit to that thing. He gives us the whole plan. And so, Daphne, I'm getting the chills thinking about this, but you have seen the benefits, right? And even if in small portions now, but you've seen the benefits of you saying yes. You've seen the benefits of walking in your purpose. And I'll share this and you can give even more. Daphne was so convicted in her purpose that she was able to step out of corporate America and say, it's time for me to walk in what God is calling me to do. And I felt such a connection with her when she shared that with me, because I spent 22 years in human resources, and we have the similar background of working in human resources. And Daphne was like, it's time. And same for me in 2018, when I was like, it's time to step into the deep and do what God is calling me to do, that I'm not going to latch on anymore to the corporate world to be able to do what God is saying do. He said, I can do this through his strength. And that's what I've been doing since 2018, because it's not always easy, but it's been worth it. And you were able to make that commitment and say, hey, I have to do something different to be able to do what God is calling me to do. So what are the benefits that you've actually seen from stepping out on faith and saying, I'm purpose to write, on purpose to speak, on purpose to use this gift that God has given me to impact lives? What are the benefits you've seen from that?
Wow, I will say that when I made the decision that I would transition out of the type of work I was doing, because I wanted to truly immerse myself in building what God has called me to build, I always would pray, Lord, allow me to work the way you've wired me. And so that opportunity was afforded to me to make that transition. I also did say that I would do contract work if opportunity presented. Because I mean,
Yes.
HR, I really love HR, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, but it would be on my terms, in terms of me being able to be remote, or me be able to have, a schedule that, or work that doesn't tax me to the degree
Mhm.
that I don't have space to do what I've been called to do. Because when you're
Yeah.
doing very taxing work, in my case, very taxing work, mentally, it didn't leave much. I didn't have anything left. And so
Mhm.
now I'm able to work in a way that I can do some work and I can have something left to
Yes.
really focus on my calling and on my purpose.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I do too. I working in human resources for that long, I'm like, yeah, you can't always step out of it. So when I need to take on some contract work, or when, so I get tapped on the shoulder, I will do that, because
Yeah.
that was also a part of, my calling and what God said I needed to do. And so it's just amazing how when you say yes. Oh, Brenda says big head nod. So glad you both stepped out on faith. So inspirational. Thank you, Brenda, for that. It is encouraging to know that we can step out on faith, right? And we can say, God, I'm just going to trust you to
Mm-hmm.
do this thing however you need to do it. And that says, Lord, allow me to work the way you wired me. This is so important, because we are all wired differently, right? And it's so true. So how God, and Tammy says, stepping out with only your purpose and God's plan. Oh, y'all are live in this
Mm.
chat today. So thank you for
Yeah,
the
church.
comments and any questions. Yeah, we having church today, because see, we know, and it's all women here tonight. It is about purpose. And we know as women that when we've been called, we got to run. We got to run with the call, and we got to run to fulfill that purpose. And so one of the biggest questions that we ask is, will you say yes? Right? Those of you who are listening, who will hear this on the replay, when you have discovered what your purpose is, will you say yes, or will you be disobedient? Ooh, okay. I just thought about I just thought about Moses striking the rock, right? When that's not what he was supposed to do, in disobedience, and we say, no, I'm going to do it my way, right? But God has a plan for that purpose. And so when you say yes to it, just watch how he will literally make everything unfold in your favor, in your favor, right? So, will you say yes when you have sought him, when you have trusted him, when you have clarified, when you have committed, right, to understanding what your purpose is? Will you now walk in it? Or will
Yes.
you step back and just be in the shadows and say, I don't really know if this is for me? What will that disobedience cost you? Right? But what will the obedience of saying yes, how would that benefit you? How would that
Absolutely.
benefit you? And so as we prepare to, oh, more questions, more comments. When you have discovered your purpose, will you say yes or will you be disobedient? And Annette says, I say yes, even when we don't understand. Ah, and that's key. I'm
That is
sure,
so.
Daphne, in your own life, there were times where you did not understand what God was doing, but you still said yes. What were some of those moments where you were like, look, I got to keep seeking clarity because I just don't understand this thing. And I want to say yes, but I need a little bit more information, God. Have you ever walked through that where you were kind of doing that tug on, I don't know if I should be doing this, or I need more, God, before I can fully commit. Have you ever walked through that?
I think I started to see the evidence of what God was saying to me in those aha moments that I've already shared. But
Mm-hmm.
God is so strategic that, he'll answer your questions before you even ask them.
Yes.
Because I shared that I left my former full-time job. And
Mm-hmm.
on the day that I went into the office to turn in my equipment, which was my last day, I got in the car and I was on the parking lot and I was driving and praying. And I was saying, okay, Lord, here I am. I've done what I know you've called me to do. And so I'm just here now ready for whatever it is that you have for me. And the next thing you know, I hear a song come on the radio because I wasn't paying attention while I was driving and talking. But when I stopped the talking, I heard a song that says, I'll say yes to my Lord. I'll say yes to my Lord. He's done great things. And I'm driving. Now,
My
I could
God.
have a wreck on that because it just messed me up. So that was one of those moments to say, okay, Lord, you're sending that into the atmosphere to even speak to and minister to me.
Yes.
So I don't know that I've had too many moments where I needed to be reconvinced that I'm making the right decision, but God has certainly been showing me along the way that this is where I'm taking you, daughter. This is what
Yes.
I want you to do. And even though it may not always make sense, or maybe I'm wondering, am I losing my mind? But
Yeah.
I knew that was what God called me to do. But He also is, what's the right word? Again, strategic. And so
Yes.
whatever it is that's part of His plan, He'll make provision
Yes.
and he'll direct your path. So you don't have to be too worried about it. But I want to throw in this disclaimer too,
Mm-hmm.
because your purpose don't mean quit your job.
That's that's
Let's
exactly
let's
right.
just really put that out there.
That's exactly
God is
right.
not calling everybody off your job. So
Yes.
I want you to be clear that this was a refashioning of my own life,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you have to do in order to walk in your purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that, because if somebody leaves this this episode tonight and says, "Oh, I'm quitting my job," then you better have heard that from the Lord, because you didn't hear that from Daphne or Stephanie.
Right. And then I shared also that I would do contract work. And I actually have a contract assignment now that I'm working through the end of the year while I'm building my coaching program. You talked about
Yes.
coaching.
Yeah.
So you be wise,
Be wise.
and use
Yes.
discernment. Yes,
Because your purpose can be fulfilled right there on your job. You just
absolutely.
have to seek him for what it looks like in the workplace. So we have a question from Brenda, and Brenda says, "You are firing me up to say yes to God's purpose."
Yes,
Yes, we
yes.
like to hear that, Brenda. So she said her question is, how do you handle feeling called to more than one thing? And then how do you choose? Oh, that's a good
That is a
question.
good question. And I will tell you that it's okay to be multi-passionate
Yes.
because we are multi-dimensional beings. But remember that you're one person. And all of those facets, like the various hats that you can wear, on Sunday you wear your fancy hat, on Saturday you wear your cap, So you can wear different hats and still be one person. And so you just have to really get clear on how those passions can work together.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you need to prioritize which one is more important right now for me to pursue, if perhaps they're, kind of on opposing ends. Like if you want to be a baker, but you want to be a singer, I mean, you have to be on the road to do that. You have to be at the house to do the other. So you really have to learn to get clear and prioritize. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's good. And I think too that there's a season. There's a season for the assignments as well, right? And so being able to understand, like Daphne said, if if those two things don't connect in some way, ask God, what season is it for, right?
Mhm.
And also, is it for you? Is it for you? Because there was something at a point that was just burning in my spirit. And I was like, what is this thing? And the more I sought clarity and the more I asked questions and I said, God, I need to understand this. It was because it was something that I was supposed to impart and share with someone else for them to be able to then run with it. And so there was purpose attached to it. It just wasn't my purpose, right? So just ask questions and seek him for, is it the right season? Is it truly a passion that's bubbling up for you? Or is it something that you're supposed to maybe help someone else to be able to fulfill? So asking the right questions, Brenda, and anyone else who may have that question, is going to help you to get to that place of understanding about your purpose and what's to be fulfilled now or in the future. All right. So we have another question from Annette. She says, how do you deal with the fear that often accompanies stepping into your purpose? Great question, Annette.
Yeah, you know what? And for everyone that's on the call or on the line here that's a believer, I will tell you that the word of God is sure enough a good way to help you overcome fear, because there are scriptures that will help to reinforce how God has not given us a spirit of fear. Now, on a practical note, I'll tell you to do it scared.
Yeah.
I'll tell you to step out anyway, and ask God to just walk with you and encourage you along the way. The other thing I would say is oftentimes fear can be tied to what you think other people might think or say. So going back to Mary, now Mary was being invited to show up and tell her fiance that she was pregnant by the Holy Spirit.
I know her knees were knocking.
Her knees had to be knocking. And not only that, the people in the community would also be wondering, now, Mary, are you really telling the truth here? She had to overcome the fear of what other people would say and still say yes to the assignment that God had for her. So, afraid or not, say yes.
Yeah.
And God will give you peace when you have aligned yourself with what he's called you to do. He will send people to help. Also, everybody needs partners, people who will help support you along the way. So he'll send you that provision to help you.
Your purpose partners.
Purpose partners.
Yeah, your purpose
that's the
partners.
second time that's come up. I need to write that down. That came up in a conversation I was having with someone else. So I need to really write that down.
Yep. That's something for you. So thank you for those questions. I know that there's so much more to this, and that's what tends to happen with these episodes, is that it's so much bigger than the one conversation, right? And so, Daphne, I'm hearing this. This conversation has to continue. And how do you, as a part of your purpose and as a part of your movement, carry on this conversation? Brenda says, I disconnected going to the book link. Oh, I caught the last part of the answer, Daphne and Stephanie. That was good. Do what works now and ask if it's for me in this season. Good steps. Thank you. So carrying on this conversation, right? Because purpose is big. It's a big topic. It is a topic that we're going to always hear about. How can you now carry this on? Because your platform is to ensure a purpose movement, a yes movement, where people say yes and then follow through with that. How will you be able to carry on this conversation? And Annette says Destiny Helpers is another name I've heard recently for purpose partners. Destiny Helpers. I love that. Because all of us here, right? Everyone who's listening clearly is intrigued, clearly is interested in this topic of purpose and wanting to know more. Some have already discovered their purpose. Some are already activating their purpose, and others are still walking through trying to figure it out and getting that clarification, right? So what are some of the additional conversations that you'll be having to be able to have the listeners to latch on to as you begin to podcast and all these other exciting things that the Lord has for you?
Yeah, actually, that's something that's really on my list. One of the things that I also envisioned was having a community where we could at least be in the same space where others who are like-minded could have dialogue within the group. So I do plan to create a Facebook community, if you will, a group where we go beyond just the subject of the book. Now, of course, the first step is get the book, right?
Yes, yes.
But
Get the
beyond
book.
that, I would say, folks want to go deeper. Some people can read the book and say, I got some steps from this that I can put into motion and I can go. But then there are folks that want to go deeper. And so I'm looking forward to creating a community where we can go deeper and where we can ask questions and where I can learn from the community. What is it that you need to help me walk you along this journey? And then we'll have offerings available for you to actually help put that into motion.
Yes. This is an excellent question coming from Annette as we prepare to close out. She says, how do you define success as you step into your purpose? And you actually end the book with talking about celebrating your yes. And so that's like so on time. Maybe that was prophetic, Annette, because that's where we were going, is, celebrating your yes, right? And being able to see the success in that. And so for you, how have you been able to define what success looks like as you have walked into your purpose?
Sure. I'm going to share this quote with you because this is actually a quote that I ended up capturing, and it's from the book. Answering the call to purpose is accepting the invitation to live a life that glorifies God, serves others, and in turn brings us contentment and happiness. And that's what I see as being successful. You're doing what you've been called to do. Yeah. You're glorifying God in the process, and you are also serving others.
I love it. I love it. And at the end of all that, celebrate and be excited and clap for yourself and pat yourself on the back that you have made that decision to say yes and that you're committed to it and you are going to run into it with a fervor like never before, right? And because it's okay if other people celebrate you, and we enjoy that, we appreciate that. But when we can celebrate ourselves because we know God is pleased, that's the most important thing. And so when we say yes, God is pleased. All of heaven is celebrating with us for saying yes, right? And so all the angels are going to come forth to be able to propel us into that purpose simply because we said yes. And so don't be afraid of the yes. Don't be afraid of the purpose and the calling, even when it feels too big for you to handle, because God doesn't give us anything that we cannot handle. Nothing, right? And he will align those destiny partners, those purpose partners, every resource, every tool, everything that we need to be able to bring the big vision to pass, because he would not give it to us if we could not handle it, because he's with us along the way. So Daphne, I honor you. I thank you, and shout out to my publishing partner sister, Jolanda Rogers of Talk Publishing, who published Daphne's book. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of that process with you, Daphne. And I'm just so excited to see this movement, this purpose movement, this yes movement come to pass, and everything that you have next. So I'd love for us to have you back when you write your next book, because I'm sure God is already stirring something up in your writer spirit, because you have that anointing to be able to write. And so we'd love to have you back and have you share more. But everyone, after the show, I will be sending out the link again for the replay, and I'll send out the link for Daphne's book so that you can make your purchase and continue to support this wonderful woman. And thank you all for joining us. This has been a fantastic night. We thank you. This has been a great conversation. All the comments and the questions, we love it. And so we will see you 2 Mondays from now. So every other Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern for the next story time with Stephanie. Daphne, anything you want to say to close us out?
I would like to ask those of you that are watching right now or that might watch the replay to just go over to my Facebook page and follow me there, because you'll be able to see developments as they come forth. It's She Said Yes Live. and that's my Facebook page. I would just love it if you would like the page, make a comment that you were here today, and I just want to connect with you. Also, if you visit my website, there's an opportunity for you to subscribe, and I would love it if you do that as well, so that my communication that I send out, that you would be able to receive that.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Daphne. And if you are an author and you want an opportunity to be on Storytime with Stephanie, we'd love to hear more about you. So please send an email to info@stephanieouten.com. That's info@stephanieouten.com. And we'd love to, see what amazing works God has birthed forward in you so that we can consider you for future episodes. So thank you again, Daphne. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. We appreciate you. God bless and good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.